We are good to go. So welcome everyone to our fantastic wisdom circles, healing the wounds we did not choose. What an amazing topic. My name's Sophia from Sacred You. We have the honor of hosting all these wisdom circles. But with us today is the beautiful Tawana Yvette, who is facilitating this wisdom circle. So I'm going to be handing it over to you, Tawana, to introduce this amazing topic and why you're so passionate about it, and then also introducing the amazing speakers that are joining us from all over the world. So, and I will be back at the end. So have a beautiful conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sophia, for that beautiful introduction. Hello, everyone. I am Tawana Yvette, also known as Thunderbird Rising by my native name. I am a fourth generation intuitive, high priestess, and a shaman. Today, we are going to be talking about healing the wounds that we did not ask for, that we did not cause, that we did not know about, and all of those things, right? So we have the beautiful Sally Ann Joy, Stephanie Jung, Abby Texiera, Gregado Meguan Quay. Did I say that right today? I hope I did.
Very
Otherwise
close.
known as Rolly. Okay, I tried. And Joe Irwin. So we're going to start with Joe, and I'm going to ask everyone to please introduce themselves. By the way, I am also the host of the Psychic Essence Tribe Collective and Trinity Sisters readings every week here at Sacred You on Wednesdays in the US, Thursday mornings in Australia. Take it away, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you, Joanna. Hi, Joe here, all the way from down under and Australia on the far north coast of New South Wales. And I work with women, empowering women to step into their own power and heal those wounds from their past so that they can live the life that they love and desire. I'm trained as an NLP and hypnosis practitioner, but I have a toolbox full of tools that I've been using over the last 40 years to support women on their journey. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Rolly, would you like to go next?
So Gigado Migunque, like I said, she very close to pronouncing it. And though that means talking feather woman, that is my spirit name. I'm also known as Roly Alaire, and I work with women with anxiety who using moon medicine to bring forth some anxiety relief. So using holistic practices. My background is addiction and mental health for a number of years. And so honing in specifically on working with women with anxiety and bringing in that holistic practice has been phenomenal. And so looking forward to the chat tonight.
Awesome. Abby, would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, there's my button. Yes, I am Abby Teixeira. I am located in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and I am a trauma recovery, which I'm actually changing that into trauma alchemist, feminine business mentor. I also help women and femmes of the global majority who are coaches, healers, creatives, move out of survival and start earning a sustainable income without sacrificing their values, their mental health, or their magic. I am a trauma survivor myself. I have been on a healing and recovery journey for the past 11 years, and I'm also a mama of four beautiful babies that have chosen me to be their mother, which is a great honor. And I am in that deep cycle breaking journey. And so, really excited to be here amongst all of you, and I can't wait for this conversation.
Awesome. Sally Ann, would you like to go next?
Thank you so much, Tuana. My name is Sally Ann Joy. I'm also from down under, North Coast, New South Wales. Oh, I've got a toolbox of various things. I'm a quantum consciousness facilitator, qualified counselor, Reiki master, light energy healing practitioner, heart resonance therapy practitioner,
been on my journey for many years, and what I do is I help people remember. I help people remember who they truly are. We come in here as beautiful lights, we incarnate, we come in here, and then we get caught up in this restricted 3D matrix. We take on limiting societal beliefs and conditioning that occurs. And many of us actually come in here as empaths, and we're come in as empaths to help people, help humanity open their hearts. But then we get all this piled high on top of us. So I support people in just connecting back to their soul, their healing, working with them to, or as a guide, really, to facilitate that opening and that remembering of who they truly are. Bring that light back in that they really are, connect back into who they truly are, and shine their light and live their true potential that they came here to live. Thank you very much.
I love that, Sally Ann. And last, never least, Stephanie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning, good evening. I'm dialed in from Northern California, so we really are calling in from different parts of the globe. I love to see it and be a part of this. Thanks for having me today. So I have a mix of a strong corporate background, actually, along with solopreneurship. And I do a lot of public speaking. And as a published author, some of my key topics are around cultivating confidence and helping women really navigate some of the binding narratives of the past that are no longer serving them and recreate stories for themselves. So I do believe in the healing power of storytelling. One of my favorite things to do is to create a safe space for women to join in community, because I believe a lot of wisdom can be shared from the people that you already know and the people that you need to be introduced to yet. So thanks for having me.
Love that. I love that, Stephanie. So healing the wounds that we did not choose. What a topic. I started my healing journey 4 years ago, and it's been the longest, shortest 4 years of my life. Because, when you're in the middle of it, it feels like, oh my God, is this ever going to end? But when you cross a certain point, you're like, wow, I did that in that amount of time. And a lot of those wounds were wounds that I did not choose. They were inflicted upon me by others. But not only do we have to heal the wounds that are inflicted upon us in this lifetime here, we have to heal the wounds that our ancestors took on before we can fully move forward in our lives, in our purpose. A lot of our habits, like the house always had to smell like bleach. That was one of my habits. The house always had, you always knew, even when I had a $750,000 house, it always had to smell like bleach. And that was not me. That was my nana and my great grandmother. So I had to heal around that because it really irritated my children. It did not serve them well. And some other things, like a poverty vow that was taken by my fourth great grandmother that I've only found out because I'm a medium. So a lot of times we don't realize where the wounds come from. Really, I would really like to hear your take on this.
So there's been lots of things that I've actually experienced. At the age of 6, I was diagnosed with anxiety. And so, but I grew up in an alcoholic home. There was lots of alcohol on both sides of my parents' families. And so there's just lots of things that from a very young age. And when we look at those ancestral pasts and some of the things that have happened is being able to heal. And so one of the things that I have been taught is that when we start our healing journey, so I started my healing journey when I was 14. One of my sisters were apprehended, and because of that, there was some family meetings that needed to take place. And in order for my sister to be able to return home, and we were given the opportunity to continue on with our healing journey if we chose to, and I chose to. And so then I've continued. And so I have brought in some holistic practices, but I've also reconnected with my own traditional history and learning about traditional ways of dealing with things, which is how I've come across using moon medicine, which is not just the moon. For me, moon medicine is being able to use energetic healing and being able to use like things like essential oils and herbs and all these different things that we can actually bring into our lives and bring forth some healing. And so I think I was 8 when I had been shared some information. So I am the eldest of, my mom is the eldest of 13 children, which means that I'm the eldest of all of the grandchildren. And so, so I have some aunts and uncles. I actually have an aunt and uncle who are younger than me. I have an aunt who is 18 months older than me. And then I have some aunts that are like 6, 7 years older than me. And so my one aunt had actually shared information about some abuse that was going on, within our family unit. And so then I took on a lot of anger around that particular situation. Even though it hadn't happened to me, it was still something that I had taken on a lot of anger, a lot of hatred towards the person who it was inflicted through. And so I one of the things that I had done is I had actually worked with an ancestor or a grandmother who actually had shared in terms of some healing, because this particular person had already passed on. It was being able to bring some tobacco to this person's gravesite and ask for forgiveness. And so, and then people go like, "Oh my gosh, ask for forgiveness? Are you crazy?" And because it's like, you didn't do anything. Like this person like should have never done what the person did. But it was, the forgiveness was about being able to release that anger and that frustration and all this the embarrassment that this was coming through my family and all those things. And so being able to release that energy allowed me to be able to do that. And so through that allowed me, so when I laid that tobacco and asked for forgiveness in order for us to be able to move through that anger left. But I also was then able to connect with some other ancestors who were able to then come through for me, that actually shared some new knowledge. And so when I was no longer carrying that anger and that hatred, others were able to come in and provide me support in my own healing journey, which was absolutely incredible. So yeah, so it's been definitely a very interesting journey, and will continue to be an interesting journey. I love the journey that I'm on, some good with some bad, and but that's where we get the balance, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Rolly. Abby, I'm interested in hearing your take on this subject.
Ooh, this is my jam. So thank you for asking. Um, yeah, and I feel you about the healing journey. I've been on my personal healing journey for past 11 plus years, and I remember right around the 3, 4 year mark, I came to one of my spiritual mentors, just exhausted, just frustrated, just because it was a full-time job for me. Like when like I said, I'm a survivor of childhood trauma, addiction, war, poverty, Violence is all part of my lineage on both sides. And unfortunately, I also grew up in an alcoholic home. And so because of that, I experienced all abuse in all forms. I'll just put it that way. And so, and for me to deal with that, I got into drugs and alcohol at age 15, and that led into a deep addiction for me for almost 15 years of mainly alcohol abuse. And so it took me ending up in jail twice for me to finally kind of get rid of the shovel. I always talk about the shovel that I was using to dig myself deeper and deeper into this dark hole and abyss. And I finally said no more. And, that's when I entered into recovery, and it just became a full-time job. Like I said, I was working as a nurse at the time. And then in the day, and then in the evenings, immediately I would be in therapy groups and all sorts of things, all sorts of things. So I remember coming to her at around year 3, 4, and I was like, when is this going to end? Like, when am I going to be able to say, I'm healed? I don't have to keep doing this, all of that kind of stuff. And, she just lovingly held me and, and I was crying and everything. And she just lovingly held me. And she said, remember that you get to do this, that you're choosing to do this work. You don't have to, but what are your other options? Right. And so when we get to do this work, this is a lifelong journey, and there isn't going to be a graduation date, right? That I'm going to eventually say I'm healed, I don't need any more of this and all of that kind of stuff. And so that really rocked me in a good way. And so anyway, so that was when you mentioned that, it just took me back to that moment for me where I just realized this was a lifelong path. And so as it pertains to lineage work and ancestry, this is something that is very near and dear for me. And somebody that I connect with very deeply is my grandmother on maternal side. And she was a very quiet, spirited woman, but also very strong. She had 9 children. She was kidnapped by my grandfather, who basically took her from her family at like age 14. And, they had 9 kids, and he died when my youngest auntie was around 2 years old. And my mom was the oldest daughter of that family. And so she had to start working at age 9, to kind of help with the house and the household and all that kind of stuff. And this was in El Salvador. My parents are from El Salvador. Um, and so she's a warrior woman, and she passed away, unfortunately, I think about a year into my healing and recovery journey, which is one of my biggest regrets, that I didn't get a chance to see her one more time before she suddenly passed. But I feel her strength every day with me. And I know that I am here to heal a lot of that lineage that has been plagued by all of this. Unfortunately, my dad is still very active in his addiction. I've had to make the very difficult decision to cut contact with him, because after years of trying to hold on to hope, that eventually he would see his ways, he would take responsibility, eventually he would seek his own healing, and he just was not for that, and so yeah, so I take it as an honor to be the one in my lineage to say no more. And like I said in my intro, I am a cycle breaker, and it's not an easy journey, because like I said, I'm a mother of 4 children. I'm parenting them in a way that I don't want to parent the way I was modeled to. And there is no manual, there is no guide, of how to do this. And so it's a lot of stumbling, falling, all of that kind of stuff. But the thing that really, really motivates me and really touches me deeply is that I know that they are growing up in such a different upbringing than I am, right? They will never, at their age, at my daughter's age, I was already being, sexually abused. I was already, hiding under my bed at nighttime because of the fighting and the glass breaking and all of that kind of stuff. And they don't know any of that. They don't know any of that. And, that just is so rewarding and fulfilling for me. And I do things differently. I do things differently. There's the biggest thing in my house is all emotions are welcome. It's just that if you're angry, if you're, mad, what's not okay is to be mean because of how you're feeling, right? And that's something that I have to tell my 5-year-old, who's very, very, very intense. He's a very intense little boy. And and the other thing is that I repair quickly. I quickly repair, because like I said, this is an imperfect journey and I'm gonna stumble and fall. Sometimes these patterns are hardwired for me that they're instant. Sometimes I get triggered by them because I'm witnessing them do things that were not safe for me to do as a child. And so my inner child starts screaming and is like, wait, what's going on here? And like I react, right? And so I will sometimes, raise my voice and things like that. And then I instantly feel bad. And then I'll get to their level, I'll look them in the eyes and I say to them, like, listen, the way I spoke to you is not okay. You don't deserve to be spoken to that way. And mommy is really sorry that I spoke to you that way. And I'm asking for your forgiveness. I'm trying to do better. And, do you forgive me? And they'll say, yes, mommy, and they'll give me a hug and things like that, right? And so this is what I talk about with cycle breaking. And I know and I feel that support of my ancestors that are cheering for me, are supporting me, are holding me. And I get to do what I think it was actually with you, Tawana, that you told me that I get to actually do the things that they weren't allowed to do. I get to say the things, experience the things, especially the women in my lineage that they were never allowed to express and do themselves. And it is such a great honor for me. And so yeah, so that's why I said this topic is my jam. So thank you for asking me.
Absolutely. Yes. I did say that yesterday when you had your reading. So I'm proud of you for digesting that in that short amount of time. I too am a survivor from an alcoholic family. I was impregnated by my father at 15. So I know what it's like. My mother and my father were both alcoholics. The only difference is my mother was sorry, my father wasn't. So that's why I'm proud to always have my mother by my right side, because time after time after time she has come through. Even on her deathbed, she tried to remove, right as they were taking her off life support, she tried to remove the tube to say I'm sorry. She was crying, she was looking at me, she was holding my hand. um and in the afterlife, she's come, I can't even tell you how many times, opened my door while I was pregnant with my daughter. I'm like, oh my God, just please don't touch me. For God's sake, please just don't touch me, because I'm just like, I'm looking at my mother and I'm not supposed to be. But Stephanie, you seem to be really passionate about this subject too. I saw a lot of this, so I'd
I
like to
love what
know.
Abby had to say. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely breaking the cycle. And yeah, I'll just take it from there. The reason I was so supportive there too is I've started more recently being much more curious about generational trauma. And when people are talking about their healing journey, especially with my upbringing, Asian American household, child of immigrants, right? There's a culture where we absolutely don't talk about our hardship, and we're just supposed to be um, grateful to be here, right? A little bit more of a survival mode. And so there really is not a culture of talking about your feelings and actually being allowed to have your feelings. And so I think that's not what I want for me. And I also didn't really think of the word of healing as something that even applied to me, right? Because I'm thinking about all the different people that, you guys have spoken here too, that have experienced such personal trauma and hardship. And maybe other folks who don't have those same stories feel like they're not deserving of having other areas where they need to pay attention and heal in their own right. And so for a while, I just didn't think that it applied to me. And then I started kind of like surfacing and realizing, as I'm getting older and as I'm getting into storytelling more so and opening up and like maintaining those open channels, memories and thoughts and experiences, of course, are like coming back in. And it's not just mine. I really truly believe that it's the experience of my lineage before me, right? My ancestors, the people who are no longer with me. Um, and it's really sad when you think about it. Like I wish I could ask my grandparents on both sides, like, live more about their lives and their hardships and what created some of the troubles that they experienced, and none of them are with me any longer, right? And so there's a little bit of regret there, but then more recently I've kind of turned a corner and I realized that they are very much still with me, And it's just kind of for somebody who is so practically minded, I have an engineering background, I have a business background. I've really started opening my mind to and my heart to a really different way and a uh, different types of conversations and experiences that can continue to give me agency in the decisions that I make and how I deal with my past and how I look forward to interacting with my family like now and in the future. Yeah, I think it's so important to talk about generational trauma. It's so important to realize what you're inheriting, right? Like talk about the wounds that we didn't ask for. Um, and instead of looking at them as just like the cards that you were dealt and deal with it, right? That it can be even like a gift too, because I am shaped by some of the experiences that I had early on. And I absolutely have agency on what I want to do with that moving forward. And that just comes from a very empowering place where I'm not really, I don't see myself as a victim any longer, but I have so much to look forward to now.
That is beautiful. And no, you have just as much right as any of us. Trauma, trauma is trauma. And not being able to express your feelings or, being held to a strict standard. All of that is trauma too. So we can't compare it. We all came in with our soul contracts to um take this journey, and trauma is trauma, and they are very much with you, and you can communicate with them, and find out what their ways were and what their beliefs or traumas or vows, even more importantly, what were their vows that they took, the oaths that they took. Some of that may be silence, some of that could be poverty. I mean, we just never know, right? Until we go to someone who can help us to know. So on that one, Joe, how do you feel about what's going on?
Woohoo! Wow. Resonate with all of it, all of it. I too came from a very, very similar background to Abby and Rolly and yourself, Tawana, and I really resonate with you, Stephanie, because like some of that trauma is actually suppressed. Like you may not even know it's there. And I remember like all the good things I don't remember as a child. I only remembered that, well, I do sort of now because I've had to go deep, but I'd never remembered. I'd suppressed all the good things and only remembered the bad. And I think that's, that's innately how we are engineered, shall I say, to really keep the mind is keeping us safe. We're keeping ourselves safe from feeling anything. And I left home at 17. As soon as I could get out of there, I was out of there. And I think that's where my journey started because for some reason I was guided to somebody, a community in an area that was very alternate. And I gravitated to herbs and growing food. And this is someone coming from a family with meat and 3 veg, became a vegetarian. I did everything opposite to what I was brought up with. So something must have shifted in me in that time. But I just knew I had to get out of there. And the most empowering part of that is you were just talking about, what we come with, but also how my life turned out. I became pregnant at 18, brought up 4 children on my own after 2 failed marriages. So my trauma was playing out in the way I lived my life. And that wasn't evident till I was like maybe after my 4th child, I found a spiritual community that actually helped me navigate what was really going on. So I had no idea about having any of this trauma in my body. And it was such a beautiful experience where we did a lot of past life regression work. Bang. I was like, whoa. So a lot of this stuff isn't even mine. And but I do also, Abby, like I also made a vow when I had my children that they would never be brought up the way that I was brought up. So I broke that generational cycle. And that was beautiful as well to watch them grow up. And being a single mum, there was no sort of back and forth, whatever. But so there's a whole lot in this conversation. My mind is just going all over the place here because it is quite deep, but it's been I think the biggest catalyst was when I did the past life regression work. And then that from there I went on and did the more surface work, if that makes sense. So really being held in the wounds, being held in the trauma, and allowing myself to really feel the anger, really feel the hurt, really feel the sadness, and be really held in that space was absolutely gorgeous. And from there, it's just been onwards and upwards, and it's been a lifetime of doing lots of different types of healing to support where I'm at when I needed it. And it's just been beautiful. So I really resonate with all of what you're saying, but that generational cycle piece is so important, so important. And yeah, because as you say, we didn't choose it. All right. I also believe we actually did choose it in a way. We choose to be born into that family. We choose to come and, heal those patterns, those karmic patterns of the past. So in doing that, we would never be here where we are today, helping others. So it's just beautiful. Yeah, in that sense.
Wow, Joe, we have a lot in common. I had my first child at 18. I've been married twice, single mom of 4. I had an adopted child and 3 of my own. So we've got so much in common. And you're right. We do come in with our contract, but we do have to go to those past lives to find out what went on. Like, why attracted to the same people over and over and over again in different bodies?
Yeah.
And like one of the other things too is accessing your akashics. That's another very healing thing. But my healing really started when I had RTT hypnotherapy. And she took me back to the womb. And then she took me back to where I signed my soul contract. And she said, "Why did you choose your mother?" And I said, "Because she was beautiful and she never felt love." So the same thing that my mother felt, I felt when I tried to end my life 4 years ago. It was the same pattern. But the beautiful thing about when we heal is we heal 7 generations behind us and 7 in front of us. So Sally Ann, since you are into all of this quantum physics, and I really want to know from you what your take is.
Thank you very much, Joanna. It's lovely to be here and just so inspiring to hear all these beautiful stories. I suppose for me, my earliest, very, very earliest memories in this lifetime anyway, is being scared of the dark. And I didn't know why. When I was born, my parents were living with my grandparents. And later on, I came to understand that there was some very disharmonious spiritual energy in that home that they were in. We're only there for a year or two, and then we moved into our own family home. But always had this incredible fear of the dark. And I'm quite short-sighted, and I felt as though I just felt as though I didn't fit in. I felt I was rejected. Like growing up, kids can be quite cruel and very rejected, and didn't feel as though I sort of fitted in anywhere here. And I always felt different, not connected, not fitted in, as though I was sort of like a square peg in a round hole, I suppose, if you want to use that expression. Then I sort of went through life sort of and sensing odd things. And then I suppose I would call the year 2000, and it was the year 2001, my semi-trailer year. In that year, both my parents died, which made 6 family members I had lost in 3 years. My marriage broke up, lost a business. My daughter was involved in a serious car accident, all in this, and I had to move and sell 2 houses, all in the space of about 8 months. And in that time, I sort of, very hard to describe, but you, like everything, the rug had definitely been pulled. And so I was having a lot more, well, a lot of contact with my parents that passed. Like my my dad passed first, and then my mum passed a few minutes later. But I would be walking along the beach after my dad passed, and both my parents were there. My mum was astral traveling, and so I was having contact with both of them then. And then I was with them both, and I actually helped them both over when they passed. But I married, I suppose, stepping back a bit, I married somebody that was a real narcissist and terrible, and that sort of really didn't help my self-esteem. Like I feel things, very much an empath married to a narcissist. Then through work I was doing, I'm also accredited as a journey practitioner, regression type therapy, Brandon Bay's work. And I had a memory come up doing that work of trauma that my mum was going through when she was pregnant with me, and she wasn't ready to be pregnant. She didn't want to be pregnant. And so in utero, I took on that trauma of hers. And so I carried that trauma through of not being wanted, and then coming in with a sight disability, being pushed out by my peers, very, very much. And so I felt like an outsider and an outcast. But what I found is had some incredible experiences with contact with spirit, and that support is there, and just knowing that support is always there. And then with this quantum consciousness work we are doing, everything I know now, and I've had some most incredible experiences, everything is connected. And yes, my belief is too, before we come in, we choose we choose the family we're coming into, we choose the type of body we're coming into, we choose basically some of the experiences we might have. But we come in here and we arrive, and then we have our free will, which is then another layer that impacts that. And a lot, and I'm trying not to generalize here, but a lot of people that come in now, they have come to transmute the darkness into light. And so when we have experiences we are transmuting into the light. We are bringing in the light. And I believe that most sincerely, very brave souls to come in this day and transmute disharmonious energy into the light, and healing that past trauma and intergenerational trauma that's here, and coming in and being the way showers and healing that. And I think there's a lot of that occurring at the moment. And with past lives, going back to that can be so healing, because, well, I don't think of the past lives, I think of them sort of alternate lives that we're having, parallel lives that we're having. It's all happening now, and being able to tap into those other parallel lives we're having, we can bring forward that wisdom from those that's to support us now. And it can also provide a great sense of knowing that we're not alone. We've never been alone. We're always supported, because everything is connected. and we are all connected. And without going into it too much, I also had a family member that was a psychopath. And so I've lived in, when I was younger, a lot of fear, and but always knowing that there was a greater energy and support that was protecting, and feeling ancestors around that were protecting has been very, very supportive. And I think being able to realize that and hold on to that with whatever we're going through, that we are never alone, we are supported. And coming in and being aware of the light and bringing in the light, we can definitely transmute intergenerational past trauma. And I think those that are doing this and those that have come in and chosen to do that are providing a great service to humanity. So I'm just so grateful for all that are doing that. Thank you very much.
You are welcome, Sally Ann. Thank you, and we honor you for sharing. I'm glad you brought up a point about, because it was where I was going next, about narcissistic traits in individuals, because when we come from backgrounds that a lot of us come from, one of the things that we do is repeat pattern of attracting people with deep, deep narcissistic traits. I'm not a psychiatrist, so I do not have the right to diagnose anyone. But in my case, the reason I tried to take my life was I was in a relationship and did not know I was being abused. And I know you're like, how don't you know you were being abused? Because I was taught abuse is physical. I was never taught that being screamed at for 3 days, being taken to the brink of a seizure, and then being told to go take your medicine so that nobody would find out that the fourth grade teacher made you have a seizure, was abuse. And so I always thought something was wrong with me. And you mentioned being in utero and hearing what your mother said. And when I took that trip with the RTT hypnotherapist, I too heard what my mother said. I need another kid like I need a hole in my head. And so I took that on in utero. And before I came here, I didn't love me. I didn't think I was worth being here. So I attracted the same person in different bodies. I attracted different aspects of my father in different bodies. And I would love, love, love to hear you all's experiences with that. Because I know mine almost I 10 minutes more and I wouldn't be sitting before you. I was found in the woods. So, Abby, would you like to share?
Sure. Interesting that because I was actually going to mention this when in my share, and I thought of it but didn't. But my dad is extremely narcissistic, and I in some of the research that I've done personally, just because I have complex trauma from everything that has happened. And that took me down a rabbit hole of really learning about all these kind of disorders and mental situations that happen as a survival mechanism because of the things that happen to us. And narcissism is a survival mechanism that kids adapt, some adapt, especially when there's a mother wound. And that was very, very true in my dad's situation. My grandmother was not a very good person, and she's still on this earth. She's not a very good person, and my dad witnessed all sorts of extreme violence and abuse growing up around her and her lifestyle choices, and he was deeply wounded because he so badly, desperately wanted the love and affection of his mother, and then to add to that. My grandfather was murdered when my dad was 14 years old, and he was part of the guerrilla in El Salvador, and they basically long story short, there wasn't even a funeral. They only found pieces of him, basically. And my dad was devastated by this, devastated. And the way that his family kind of helped him move through that was handing him a bottle of alcohol. They basically, his uncles told him, at age 14, here, take this. This will help, everything kind of go away and soothe and numb, right? And then entering into the military at 14 and seeing all the vicious, horrific violence that the Civil War happened there, right? Like just a lot, it was a lot. And so I have come to terms with, and it's interesting that one of you had mentioned about forgiveness. And I truly feel that in my soul. Like I have done so much work, and it's a continuous work on the forgiveness with my dad. And two truths can exist at one time. There is nuance in this, right? Because I hold him accountable, and he has taken responsibility in my mind, for the acts and all of that kind of stuff. And I have chosen to forgive him for me, so that I can have peace, right? And I also feel so much sadness and tenderness for, and empathy for what he experienced, throughout his life and his childhood. And unfortunately, he has chosen, the darkness. He's never wanted to admit, he's never wanted to look at, he's never wanted to, recognize that he's even wounded, right? And everything is everyone else's fault. Like just that very, very victim mindset and mentality. And so many people have tried to help him, and he doesn't want it. He can't even help himself. And something that was so powerful for me a few years ago when I was really grieving, um, making the decision to go no contact with him, which really created a lot of distance with my other family members. Because in dysfunctional family systems, there's roles that we all have, right? And my role was the scapegoat of the family. And so because I'm the one that speaks out, I'm the one who's naming these things, bringing them to light, all of that kind of stuff. I'm the one that's the troublemaker, all of that kind of stuff, right? And um I was just I it was just such a wound for me to think that I like what I translated his complete rejection and resistance to wanting to get help and get better and even own up and take responsibility. I attributed it to to direct worth for myself. So I was like, was I never worthy enough of his love? Was I never worthy enough for him to love me, to all of those kind of things, right? And I had this incredible, she's one of my spiritual mentors. We did a really deep theta level like healing a session. And something that she said to me in this session was that um, it's not about you. It's not that he didn't love you. You have to understand that he doesn't even love himself. So how can he love you? When he can't even have love for his own self, right? And there was just something so both devastating and at the same time relieving about really understanding that and how deep the trauma really, really affects certain people. And unfortunately, in this lifetime, he is going to choose to, because you're right, we all choose this human experience. He chose this life experience, and he's choosing not to break the patterns and not to break the karma and all of that kind of stuff, right? And so unfortunately, he will reincarnate and he will have to repeat again until right, until he chooses himself and he chooses love, right? And so that was really, really powerful for me. But it's interesting because similarly, I also, when I was in my teens, when I was in my early 20s, the kind of men that I attracted were narcissistic. That was love to me. That was normal, right? Like I thought love was supposed to be jealous and intense and like fierce and like physical and like violent and all this. Like that's what was modeled to me, right? That with a little sprinkle of Disney in there because I grew up watching Disney movies. So I was like, oh, like Prince Charming and, but Prince Charming looks like my dad, who's like abusive and like all this stuff. And that's love, right? And thankfully, I found my real Prince Charming, who's complete opposite of anyone I had ever been with. We've been together now for almost 17 years, and he's obviously the father of my four beautiful babies, and he has given me like he is the example of what a man, to me in my life looks like, right? Like he is responsible, he's a protector, he is loving, he's tender, and he takes care of himself, he loves himself, and therefore he shows that to me and my kids, right? And so, yeah, so it's just it's a lot of things kind of from each of you really, really resonate, and and it's interesting. It's really interesting when we start to learn and everything kind of weaves together. And and forgiveness is so key. I find it that it is critical for me to forgive, for me, no one else, right? For me, it's for my peace of mind. And people won't understand it. People won't understand it, right? It's like, how could you forgive like this and that when he is still, in active addiction and he's still in this and that's like has nothing to do with him, right? Just like my worthiness had nothing to do with the fact that he couldn't, love himself, right? And then therefore love his children and his wife, right? My mom. And so yeah, so thanks.
Absolutely. Rolly, I was gonna call on you next.
Well, and it was
We're
just, it seems to be like so fitting in terms of like the stories. And so my dad was not the narcissist in our family. My dad was the scapegoat. So my dad drew into the addictions because of the experiences that he had. And so it was easy for me to be able to forgive my dad, but my dad was also my protector. So even though things were very chaotic because of his drinking, or that his drinking played a part in that, is that he wasn't the person that was the physically abusive and that kind of thing. And that came from through my mom. And so I have a good relationship with my mom. I've worked with a lot of things my dad has passed on. My dad actually also became sober, so my children had never seen my dad drink. And so I was very fortunate because it was like my children are not going to be around that experience, and I wasn't going to allow that. And so when my dad went away to treatment, he came back with a lot of different insights and a lot of understanding of like things that I had experienced as the eldest child, and being the protector, because that was my role. My role was protector as the eldest. And but then being able to understand the roles and understand where my dad was coming from his addiction perspective, is that it allowed me to be able to have this different understanding of, because when I went away to the family treatment, I had met somebody who was like my dad, and I was the only person who smoked. So I would be the person who would be in the smoking area with the people who were in their full addiction. And there was an older man that was there that just reminded me of my dad. And it was like he gave me some different perspectives of because his daughter wouldn't speak to him and that kind of thing. So him and I bonded that way. And then when my dad went away to treatment, my dad bonded with another young girl who reminded him of me. And so then the two of us actually had that experience of being able to have this deeper level of our own healing. And so and being able to understand like where all those things were coming from, and how so like all of my uncles were alcoholics, but in my dad's side of the family they were all alcoholics. My grandfather was, but my two of my uncles were hidden alcoholics. My dad was overt, like everybody knew that my dad was alcoholic. And but as we got to know a little bit more about like those family dynamics, and those things were still happening, and that kind of thing. And so but just being able to and then again understanding, so those narcissistic traits were the traits that my mom had experienced, and my mom's healing them, and my mom's working still on dealing with that. But it was like he was the one that would actually come in when my mom was being aggressive. He would be the one that would actually protect us and make sure that we were okay even when he wasn't okay. And so like I said, I've maintained, I did the same as Abby of like cutting out certain people in my family. I do call people out, and so I'm often the one who is the bad guy in the family, and I will own it because I'm not living that way, and I choose not to live that way, and I don't want to be part of that. And so just being able to have those different that different understanding and that different perspective of this is the life that I chose from a spiritual level, and I because I believe that as well. And so just being able to know that I can heal those 7 generations forward and 7 generations back, and that I have a very strong foundation of my own healing journey that has been come and go, right? So like I started when I was 14, but it doesn't mean that it has been a narrow path. It has been back and forth, and then boundaries. I set boundaries, and boundaries get broken. I teach about setting boundaries, and I break my own boundaries. And today was a prime example of that, where I allowed someone to become very aggressive around me that broke my heart. And so I have to sit with that, and then I will address it, but it's still like these still patterns, right? So it's like I thought that I was very firm on like this is not something that I will tolerate, or these are not some of the things. And then here I am in the situation where I have to try and heal that wound and figure out how to be able to navigate those, because how I'm going to respond is going to be other people are going to feel hurt by my decisions. And because I will not tolerate, like, you can choose to tolerate that, but I choose not to tolerate that. And those kinds of things. So like kind of going in with those, and this particular person that I have to address, has a lot of narcissistic traits, but will point out other people's narcissistic traits, which is actually kind of interesting from that perspective, from a psychological perspective. But it's still being able to know how to be able to do that. And so I just really want to commend Abby on being able to be that that shift and that generation breaker, like those that it's not happening in my family, but knowing that there are going to be those ebbs and flows of the things, and needing to go back to your children to say, I'm really sorry, which is my children are now adults, and those are the same conversations that I had with my kids of like, yeah, no, I should not have responded that way. And how can we move forward, and how can we actually deal with this? So kudos to you, Abby, on being able to do this at this age, and being able to bring things forward.
Yeah, I'm really proud of Abby as well, being able to do it before, because I, like others, had to go through 2 years of separation from my children. It was their decision, and they had the right to make that decision. But when we came back together, it was, I failed you. I was not the parent you needed. I was the parent I needed. I jacked up. What are your boundaries with me? How can we heal this? How can we move forward? And I am back in touch with my children now. And they are on their healing journey, and I am able to be there for them while they're on their healing journey. So Joe, what would you say about that?
Wow. Yeah, just lots of things. We've only got a limited amount of time though, so I'll try and keep it brief. And even though my father was an alcoholic, he was never around really. I only ever heard him at like 3 a.m. in the morning abusing my mother. So I became the protector of her. And she was to me, and still is, she's a saint. And I talk to her every day. And unfortunately, she passed away at the age of 61. And I feel that, that was partly because of her own inability to stand up for herself and all the disease that came to her body as a result. at the same time, I felt not protected by anyone because my brother was a psychopath. And whenever they were not around, he would go for me. So I lived, you know, in a lot of fear a lot of the time. He was the eldest, I was the second of six. So I feel like, you know, and none of this would have made sense even when I left home. I just knew I had to get out of there. So to me, it took a long time to unravel all these pieces that I was holding in my body, and taking that fear out into the world at age 17. You're still really like immature. I attracted somebody like my brother who was a drug addict and and had two children, lived in a relationship with a drug addict. I mean, it wasn't anything heavy, just marijuana, but still he was living this, you know, high life, as a person of influence in the community. And that for me was safe, even though it really wasn't, because I remember one time we were raided, and you know, I had a baby in my arms. How safe was that? So it was interesting that I attracted someone like that, but I very quickly learned after leaving that relationship what I did want, and I attracted a beautiful man. So unfortunately, that didn't last, but it was a different flavor, a different experience. And I think we stack these experiences, don't we? And along the way, we learn to sort of heal those parts of us that never got seen. So the first one was about, you know, me being worthy. And I think that brings up a lot for a lot of women, having, you know, confidence and self-worth, and accepting it because if you get loved, accept anything because you get the love that you crave, that you didn't have. And as we get older and wiser and we start to heal those parts and know exactly what we want, we then tend to attract more of that. So yeah, this conversation could go on forever, but I'll leave it there.
Sally Ann, would you like to chime in next?
Thank you very much, Joanna. Yeah, there's a lot I could say too. And I know like Joe, this could go on forever, but I know we only have a limited time. But yeah, I think some very good points have been raised by everybody. Firstly, like narcissist and abuse. And abuse is, yeah, I always thought abuse was physical, and like, you know, I was in a relationship where somebody was very emotionally and psychologically abusive, and that really, it just really can sap you dry pretty much and really destroy you. And so I think it's really important to remember that abuse is not just physical. And yeah, so important to remember that. And the power of forgiveness, because when we're forgiving somebody, I mean, chances are that they don't give a damn what we're thinking. We're doing it for us. We're doing it for us. And so forgiveness is so very liberating. So forgiving anybody that there is any hate with, I think is a very, very good idea. One great way I found doing that is the Ho'oponopono forgiveness prayer, and there are other ways as well, but it's so very important to just keep doing it until the heat's gone out of it, because we're doing it for ourselves, and that is so very important. And I think another thing is we talk about these experiences, and you know, what brave souls that we are, having these experiences and coming out the other side and working through this and healing. But it's also very important to remember that we are first and foremost energy. So we are energy. So everything, we're feeling it. We cognitively going through stuff, but we're also feeling the energy of that. And through that energy, we subconsciously take on beliefs that are not necessarily ours. We take on other people's beliefs of us, and take that on energetically, like with what I picked up in utero from my mum was a feeling. It was her feelings, like she wasn't ready to be a mum at this time. And so that was an energy I picked up. And so, you know, I came in as an empath and had to do a lot of work through that and releasing it. A lot of the work I've done with that, it's through quantum consciousness work. We have protocols we can help people with through that, and being able to work through that, and beliefs there that I didn't even know were there. And so being able to work that beyond through that beyond the cognitive at a very, very deep level. So I think it's really important to realize first and foremost that we are energetic beings that have taken on this meat suit, this physical body. We have come in here and then we experience these things. So it's looking after ourselves, validating ourselves, and working on ways of healing on all levels, the energetic level, the physical, the cognitive, the emotional, all levels for the healing to occur. And part of that is forgiveness, and that is so very, very important, and just a validation, and then being able to step out of the story, because the story is not who we are. The story is stuff we've experienced as part of our soul's growth, but it's not who we are. We are these beautiful, empowered, connected, beautiful souls that have come in here full of light and chosen to come in here at this time to do whatever our purpose is, to shift energy, to bring light, to transmute trauma, whatever. But we've chosen to come in here at this time, and we need to honor ourselves every day and all the work we are doing and how much we are achieving and have achieved, I believe. Thank you.
Yes, we do. And Stephanie, last never least.
Sure. A couple of things in listening to this beautiful conversation. I will definitely emphasize that it's beyond cognitive, for sure. Especially I can speak as somebody who is very much in her head and, you know, explaining my background here and where I'm coming from, that it's not as if I suddenly my healing journey suddenly brought me from point A to B, and I had these realizations. I really had to go beyond the, you know, what was going in my mind and my thoughts, and trying to just always like figure things out, like why am I this way or why am I feeling this way, and realizing that there is so much to be listened to in the body. So first, I just wanted to echo that was a huge part of my healing journey as well, and especially more recently, I'd say within the last year even. And the other maybe link I'd like to make around self-worth and, of course, confidence and how we view ourselves and what we believe about ourselves related to our family roles. Unlike the protector role that was discussed here, I have always been more of the mediator. Let's try to make things work out and balance, when other people were trying to be more outspoken and rebellious. I really shied away from that because I just wanted everything to be okay, right? And more recently, I had, I would say, that behavior and that almost like learned skill did really well for me in my career, right? And people like working with that. And people like to build teams on collaboration like that. Um, and so I started getting rewarded for being like that, right? And talk about like trying to differentiate your identity, your learned identity from what other people want of you, from what society wants of you, and then of course from what a corporate environment can get out of you, right? Um, I started becoming like much more outspoken, and in my day-to-day work, that has gradually made me feel more comfortable doing it in my personal familial, you know, assessment of just like where things are and where they want to go. So the role of the mediator, right? It can serve you so well. It can really damage you depending on the context, of course. I don't have to really explain that, but where I ended up thinking was my ability to either keep it together or hold my family together in spite of everything, whether I could do it or not had nothing to do with my own self-worth in the end, which
Very
is
good.
just wild, right? Yeah.
Right,
So I
right.
just wanted to share
It
that.
is. It is. I'm glad you did. Thank you so much for sharing. Well, this has been an amazing conversation, ladies. We have brought so much wisdom, so much understanding, so much power into this conversation. So Sophia, are you there to chime in?
I am definitely here, Tawana, and thank you. I've been listening, and yes, ditto to everything you just said. It has been an amazing conversation, so much wisdom. And I'd just like to take a moment just to honor everyone who's here for sharing, sharing your story, sharing what is close to you, to being open, to being vulnerable, because that gives women all over the world the choice or the option, the okay. They allow themselves to also be open and vulnerable. So thank you. And thank you, Tawana, for facilitating a wonderful discussion, and for Sally Ann and Stephanie and for Joe and Gigado Migwankwe. I'll get that to roll. And Abby, who's tuning in for the first time. Abby and Stephanie, you've done a wonderful job, and we do hope that we'll see everyone soon. And for everyone who is watching, we do have a couple of watchers on our website, which is wonderful. Hello to Elizabeth. Check out the links. I've been putting the links of these amazing women below. Do check them out. And of course, if you're not already in Sacred You, come and join us. It's just Sacred You, that's the letter U.love/join free. Come and join us for free. You get so much in the village. Check out the village, including amazing wisdom circles. Tawana will be back in about 5 weeks, roughly, for part 2, for the next stage of this incredible topic, healing the wounds that we did not choose. It is such a needed conversation throughout the world. So thank you.
Thank you.